You may come across gospel music or some music that you're not sure what's being played. You can hear what you're hearing, but you're not able to relate to the keyboard. Now, whenever you listen to gospel music, it isn't played in a bubble. The chords don't exist by themselves because they just sound good. There's a method to the madness. And most of that actually starts with something as simple as the major scale. Let's discuss. I'm Chris, and this is Gospel Progressions University. So today we're going to look at modes and scales and how they actually work to help us to hear harmonies and to use our ears to be able to pick out chords and things we may not automatically realize when we listen to music. When we approach playing modes or scales, for example, most people are going to be accustomed or used to the major scale. So let's take E flat major scale. So E flat major, I'll start from here. It's going to be E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, and D, and of course A flat, E flat again. And it's a 7-tone scale. So with each scale, it corresponds to a particular mode. Simply put, the first scale will be the first mode. That is known as the Ionian. And then we invert that now, and we go to the second part of the scale, which will start at F. That would be known as a Dorian, going from F all the way to E flat, which is still a 7-tone scale. Another inversion would be starting from G. That would give us the Phrygian mode. And then we have the Lydian mode, starting from A flat. Then we have the Mixolydian mode, starting from B flat. And then we have the Aeolian mode, starting from C. And the Locrian mode, finally. So these are all 7-tone scales. They all come from the major scale. All a mode is an inversion of the major scale. So if we're looking at the 7 modes of the major scale, we're looking at the 7 inversions of the major scale. Now, oftentimes people would use this and they would understand, okay, I know the modes. I know the modes for all 12 keys because I know all 12 major scales, and that would be good. That's a good beginning because that is the first step to understanding how to practically actually apply something like this. So the purpose of the mode isn't necessarily to solely just shift the position of the scale or invert the scale and play it over a corresponding mode. In other words, say we had E flat as a bass or a lower tone, and we took, say, for example, A flat Lydian. It's going to give us a particular sound, but it still sounds like it wants to end or be resolved on E flat. Even if we were to invert that and say, well, we can play just the 4th mode, Lydian mode, with having this as the tone in the left hand. Okay, and the chords that correspond to that is going to give us a Lydian sound, right? However, if we're playing chords that are diatonic to that actual key, E flat, meaning that we're not using any sharps or any flats, even something like this would still sound like it wants to resolve to E flat major. So what is the purpose then of these modes? What's the point of using them if it's going to still make the tonal center sound like it's playing in that major tonal center? The way I would approach it, and what I do whenever I hear gospel music and I'm listening for modes, I'm thinking of it as a key change. I'm looking at it as a way to shift the tonal center. Let's take a look at an example how these modes are used to shift the tonal center in gospel music. Let's listen.
You have the power to make the seasons change. The river flows for you. The wind whispers your name.
When I approach modes and I apply it to music, I like to look at it as one, a way to shift the tonal center and to use it to reharmonize. And number 2, I use a method, a personal method I call STO, or STO, what's known as scale tone overlap. And what I mean is this: we can look at all 7 modes or 7 inversions of the key of E flat. Like we have this over here, right? All right. And this is what we did right here. So you may ask yourself, since we're looking at E flat diatonically, where in the world did this A come from? Well, if we look at the modes now, we can see where this came from. And typically, as a shortcut, as a kind of a rule of thumb to myself that I'll show you here, anytime I'm using modes, the keys that match the most of these tones are going to be the keys of A flat and B flat major. Meaning that if we shifted its mode, that will give us the chords that go along with it. In other words, we know that B flat major are going to be those tone scales there. But if I started from the 1, 2, 3, 4, I started from here, the fourth would give me the Lydian mode. So if I start here and I go from E flat, F, G, A, B flat, C, D, I just played all 7 tones of the E flat Lydian mode, which corresponds to B flat major, or the B flat Ionian. If we look at it like that, typically we like to start the modes from left to right. We don't have to practice it like that, but we're accustomed to it in our ear as saying, okay, well, this is this scale and we're going to start from left to right. And it's easier to show it to you that way because it makes the most sense. This is our starting point. So we make the tonal center. It's still going to be E flat because we're jumping in and out of it using modes. So in other words, typically when we get there, the first thing we're going to look at, okay, we have, all right, this chord is in E flat, but it's also in B flat. In fact, if we jump back a little bit and we looked at the scale tones for E flat, right? We say E flat, F, G, and we can look at B flat and we can go E flat, F, G. Well, this is 1, 2, 3 in E flat. And for B flat, it's 4, 5, 6. Okay, so even if you jump back a little bit, we said, okay, we'll start with 1, 2, 3 for E flat, for B flat, 1, 2, 3. And then for E flat, it would be 5, 6, 7. So in other words, we have 1, 2, 3 that match and 5, 6, 7 that match. So all these scale tone or the scale tone overlaps are present for these 6 notes, all with the exception of the A for B flat and the A flat for E flat, meaning that that's the only 2 notes between those 2 that don't go. So it's going to be 6 out of 7 tones. That's pretty good. So when we have 6 out of 7 tones that match, we can actually use most of the chords and interweave between those 2, and it gives us an interesting sound. So whenever we hear this, we know this belongs to E flat and B flat. All right, this A flat doesn't, but we have so many overtones that match B flat. It doesn't really matter because technically we really still are in E flat at this point because we're using the A flat there. And then we go here. This is going to be B flat, okay? This is a 3 for B flat. And this is the 1 here that I'm playing on my left hand, on my right hand. But it's still a 7 for E flat and a 5 for E flat. This here is a 2 for E flat, for B flat rather, I'm sorry, and a 6 for E flat. And this is where we shift. Now we're in B flat because of this A. Now, typically, you're not going to play the note or tone on top, because that defines the melody, non-diatonically. And this is done intentionally because the writer of the song, or the way the song is arranged, they want to bring this out because the singer even sings this note to give it the color and then jump right back into A flat by going to E flat rather, I'm sorry, by going to the A flat chord. Okay, so, all right, this is E flat. This is E flat 2. And now we shift to go someplace else. Again, we have another foreign note. It has nothing to do now with B flat, and then that has nothing to do with E flat either. This would be the D flat, C sharp, and D flat in this case. So where is it coming from? Again, I like to use either the 4th or the 5th, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4. So when I'm playing that, I'll start now with the A flat major scale. And if I know I'm using this, I'm not going to start here because I won't say 1, 2, 3, 4 and C, or no, it's going to be D flat Lydian, because that's not what I'm looking for necessarily. What I'm looking for is the progression that it's taking. because I know that's where we're gonna go, where we're gonna land on. More than likely. In this case, it really doesn't land on that A flat. It lands on its relative minor. In other words, the chord progression would typically move like this, 2, all right? And then do a 5 chord, 1, okay? So why I'm saying 2, 5, 1, that's typical in gospel. So because we're going off of a 2 chord, right? And with this here, E flat, and then 2, 5, and then 1. That's a typical chord progression. Like I said, on the album, they don't go to the A flat, they go to the F. But for the purposes here, I want you to understand, since we're starting on the 2, the B flat becomes the new 2 for A flat. So the 5, 2, 3, 4, 5 of E flat becomes the 2, 1, 2 of A flat. Becomes the 2. How is that used, or how would we apply this idea of modes? Well, simple. We say we're going to take the A flat Ionian, which would be this. We shift it over now, say now we're going to invert the scale. Start here, same notes, just an inversion. And the second mode would be what? Dorian. So we look at B flat Dorian. So because we have B flat Dorian now, and it implies A flat, we can say 2, 5, and 1. And that's how that works as far as applying modes. It works because if we look here at the key of E flat, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 in E flat. For A flat major, we have 5, 6, 7, 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. We have 4 tones that match, okay? And now we go to 2 for A flat, which would be 2 for A flat, and 5 for E flat. For A flat, we have 2, 3. For E flat, we have 5, 6. The only thing that changes now is the 7. There is no D in A flat major or B flat Dorian. Same thing, different inversion. However, it doesn't matter because most of the scale tones match. So we're looking for matching scale tones, or STO, scale tone overlap. And once we have that, we can go anywhere we need to go, anywhere we want to go. Even if some of the chord tones don't match, it doesn't matter. We can use scale tones that may match by a single scale. That will be enough to give us a chain to be able to tie those two together using this STO, or scale tone overlap method. And one final note on this: whenever you're looking for scale tones that overlap, like they did here with this F major chord over an A, you can do that, but be careful with that because it may take you too far out of the key and you may not be looking for that. Typically, I like to keep the melodic passages and the melodic lines because you have C that is shared with the keys of E flat Lydian and E flat major. Okay, this would be the 2 for B flat, or the 6 for E flat. This would be the 2 for E flat and the 5 for B flat, because these all share. So, but that's just a rule of thumb. This doesn't necessarily mean it's a hard and fast rule. It is music theory, not music fact. And you may use a tone that's non-diatonic like A to emphasize something that you're trying to say, or you're trying to express and make some kind of color. So in summary, we use modes and these scale tones to change and hop back and forth between keys, typically a 4th or a 5th higher, all right? And we use the STO method, the STO, to apply scale tone overlap to actually come up with ways to connect the keys to one to another. And finally, we're listening for note prominence on top. Like, we are going to stick to our diatonic notes in the melody in our pinky just to keep the tone coherent. We could leave it. It's not a hard and fast rule. Again, this is music theory, not music fact. But these are other tools that we can actually use to create more color and more interest in our music, and it'll help us to hear better and to listen for particular chords and parts that we may not understand right away. I hope this has helped you, and I hope this has been a blessing to you. You can check out my website. I have a free guide called What Do Pro Musicians Know That You Don't? It's at gospelprogressionsuniversity.com/Gospel Keys Pro. If you are having a hard time grasping some of this stuff and grasping how scales and things like that work in gospel music, this guide will definitely be a help for you. And God bless you, and I will see you in the next video.